We begin today's show with a Democracy Now! Exclusive. One of New York's best-known immigrants' rights advocates joins us on what might be his last day as a free man in the United States. Ravi Ragbir is executive director of the New Sanctuary Coalition of New York City. This morning, right after our broadcast, Ravi heads for a check-in with Immigration and Customs Enforcement here in New York City. He plans to go to the meeting, even though he may not be released. The usually predictable process of checking in with Immigration and Customs Enforcement as part of a regular supervision process has become a source of anxiety for many immigrants since President Trump ordered changes to enforcement in January. In just one example, last week in Phoenix, Arizona, a single father of 3 U.S.-born children had plans to celebrate his son's 17th birthday after a check-in meeting that he thought was to discuss his request for asylum. An hour later, Juan Carlos Famperosa Garcia's daughter says officials, quote, brought me a bag with the stuff, and that was it. Her father was deported the next day. Meanwhile, other immigrants have gone to their check-ins and were released as expected. No matter what happens this morning at Ravi Ragbir's check-in, he will not go alone. As part of his work, he's conducted trainings on how to accompany people to their check-ins in order to show support and document what unfolds. He himself will be joined by faith leaders and elected officials, including several city council members and New York State Senator Gustavo Rivera. Just last month, Ravi was recognized in Albany, the New York State capital, with the Immigrant Excellence Award by the New York State Association of Black and Puerto Rican Legislators, given to those who show, quote, deep commitment to the enhancement of their community, unquote. The Independent newspaper recently featured him in a cover story called Walk With Me by Democracy Now!'s Renee Feltz, and a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation film crew is following him today. Ravi legally immigrated to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago more than 25 years ago, but a 2001 wire fraud conviction made his green card subject to review. Even though he's married to a U.S. citizen and has a U.S.-born daughter, the government refuses to normalize his status. Instead, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has exercised prosecutorial discretion to grant him a stay of deportation. His current stay lasts until 2018, but his 15-year-old criminal record makes him an easy target for removal. Last night, his supporters and legal team met for one last time before this morning's check-in. This is Raya Trivedi, a third-year law student at NYU School of Law, who's helping represent Ravi through the school's Immigrant Rights Clinic.
You can see that for many, many years, the ICE office has recognized the outstanding contribution that he has made to the community as a leader, as someone in the faith community and the immigrant rights community, as a very important person to a lot of people. And they have recognized that, and we expect that they will continue to do that. So we prepare for the worst, we expect the best.
That's Raya Trivedi. Well, this morning, Ravi Ragbir joins us in our studio before he heads to check-in. Also joining us, his wife, Amy Gottlieb, a longtime immigrant rights lawyer with the American Friends Service Committee. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! I know this is a really tough time for you right now. Ravi, talk about what you will do after you leave Democracy Now!
Well, I will just head to the subways. Basically,
You'll head to the subway.
I'm going to the subways.
You're going underground.
I am going underground. That's absolutely true. But normally, or some people would say, why don't I go underground? But that's not an option here, and I am not going to do that. I am going to Immigration and Customs Enforcement offices at 26 Federal Plaza, and I'm going to basically turn myself in and hope and expect that they will allow me to come back out. And there's a stay, you mentioned the stay of removal that expires in 2018. That would be a normal expectation that they would release me because they gave me this stay. But as you said, there are many instances that people have not have been taken away and end up deported.
When you say you're going to turn yourself in, what you're doing is you're going for a check-in, which can be very routine in the United States for immigrants.
Absolutely. So it is a routine check-in. It's like a parole, right, for analogy. And you would just go in to meet your deportation officer, and he would make sure all information is correct, and normally we would walk out. But not in this instance, and that's what is going to happen, and that's why you mentioned the accompaniment. When we partner U.S. citizens with immigrants who are in this crisis, not only for myself but many others, they are able to get the support from the community, and so they are not in this fearful space, but also getting the officers to treat that person with respect.
I mean, this is actually amazing because you really pioneered this accompaniment program for check-ins, which most people don't really think about, where people accompany an immigrant to check-in.
So people have been accompanied before, but we have had a training to have them understand what they need to do, their response in different scenarios, and not only to their check-ins, but to the court. So a lot of times the lawyers will say they don't need any family or friends. I'm the lawyer, I will get you out. But in actual fact, when the community is there, the minister, especially the minister and the congregation, it makes a difference when in that judge's eyes that there is such a large support and such a large community here that it makes a difference. And we have gotten people freed. We have gotten people, the judge has said, okay, you have won your case because of the large community support. So yes, it is something that is unique to the Union Sanctuary, where the training is very important for the immigrant as much as the volunteers.
But here there is no judge. You will meet with an ICE officer.
I will meet with a deportation officer.
A deportation. And do you know that person? You've been doing this for years.
I've been doing this for years, and it changes every time. Maybe one time we've had the same deportation officer, but we never know who is going to be the officer on file, and I never know who I'm going to be meeting today. So sometimes the officers are friendly, sometimes they're not. And that uncertainty of who we're going to meet, before, when I had a 2-year stay in 2014, the officer said, okay, we'll see you in 2 years. In 2016, when I went back to renew it, the officer said, I'll see you in 1 year. There was no rhyme and reason why I had to go back in today. But, as my wife will say, it's probably the best thing that we had to come in so I would not be looking over my shoulder every day.
So, Amy, you're Ravi's wife. You also happen to be an immigrants' rights attorney. How long have the two of you been married?
We've been married about 6.5 years. We got married in September of 2010.
And Ravi, how long have you been in the United States?
I've been in the United States since 1990, just over 25 years.
For a quarter of a century. Yeah. So, Amy, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. We have been through this before. It does feel different. What feels good is the outpouring of community support that we have right now, knowing that we honestly have the best legal team on earth, the best organizing team on earth. We have a committee, a defense committee, that is helping us kind of strategize about what to do if he gets taken in, how to celebrate if he doesn't get taken in. So we've been taking it one day at a time, feeling, of course, anxious, not sleeping so well, but at the same time holding out hope that ICE will, continue the existing stay and that we have more time to continue real legal options to help Ravi get full legal status here.
So you go in together to, it's almost like a DMV-like room, right? Department of Motor Vehicles, you got Fox News on the television, and then your number is called?
Well, not a number, but we will turn in the paperwork, the supervision paperwork, to the window, like a DMV window, and they would they will leave it for the deportation officer to pick up, and then the officer will come out and either call me to the door and say, okay, come back in 6 months or a year. But in another scenario, he will call me in to say, I need to talk to you, and you will not see me again.
And Amy, can you be with him through this time?
It depends. I mean, I can be with him waiting, and it depends if they bring him back or not. In previous years, they have allowed me back if they call him in to, like, have a quick conversation, but you just can't predict, right? You just don't know how they're going to act.
So you could be taken, and you just never see Ravi here in this country again.
It's possible. We have heard of times where a person we knew a couple of years ago got taken in, and he was accompanied by people we knew, and they allowed them back there to say goodbye. So it's possible that they would do something like that. But as I said, you know, it depends on the officer. It depends on a lot of different scenarios.
And that was the accompaniment program, right? The volunteers from the accompaniment was allowed to speak, to be there. But it's a different era now, different atmosphere. So what we would have expected, we cannot expect anymore. So it's totally unknown.
So if President Obama were still in office, under him, they had granted you a 2-year stay. So although they said you had to come back this year, you would have another year until hoping to get another stay as you work out your green card and your residency status.
That's right. We would have expected to go in. It would be a routine check-in, and they'll say, "Well, you have to stay. We will see you back in another year." But even if there was another administration, we would have expected something similar.
So let me turn to President Trump speaking just last month.
I said we will get the criminals out, the drug lords, the gang members. We're getting them out. General Kelly, who's sitting right here, is doing a fantastic job. And I said at the beginning, we are going to get the bad ones, the really bad ones. We're getting them out, and that's exactly what we're doing. I think that in the end, everyone's going to be extremely happy.
We're going to get the really bad ones out, Amy.
You know, for so many years working on these issues, we have been really struggling to eliminate this idea that there's a good immigrant and a bad immigrant, right? That we have people who come to our country who are people who have lives that, you know, sometimes there's a criminal conviction, there's a bad act, but we want folks to be able to look at the whole person. And when you hear that kind of language about, you know, getting the bad people out, it stirs up something inside of me that, you know, that's not Ravi, right? Like, we're not talking about bad people here. We're talking about the people who are part of our communities. That's just rhetoric that, you know, kind of pits people against each other.
Ravi, you had a criminal conviction how many years ago?
I was convicted in 2000.
For a wire fraud
conviction. Wire fraud, working as a salesman for a mortgage lender. And
how long did you serve in jail?
I was sentenced for 2.5 years. I was under house arrest before I served the 2.5 years, for 3 years before that. So 3 years I was under house arrest, and then I went into prison for 2.5 years, and then I ended up in detention for 2 years.
So then they wanted to deport you right after that, but
That's
you
right.
fought that and won.
I fought that, and we have been fighting that since then. So it has been, this is where the legal team, Rhea and my legal team, my attorney Alina Das, have been saying that this process, this process, and I use air quotes, right, because the process itself was completely wrong, and they can point to many errors in the process itself.
I want to turn to a different case, to Rose Escobar, speaking last month in Houston, Texas, after her husband, Jose, the father of their 2 children, was detained when he showed up for his annual check-in and almost immediately deported.
My husband is not a criminal. My husband is a good man who works hard and provides for me and my children. My husband already makes America great. You take him away from me, you have me going to welfare, food stamps. That's not the life that I want. I'm not saying it's a bad life, but that's not the life I had, and it's not the life that I want.
Amy, that's the wife of Jose. You're the wife of Ravi. Your feelings right now as you head down to Federal Plaza. The 2 of you, as soon as you arrive, will be holding a news conference. Is that right? Hundreds of people are expected. I went down to the offices at the Judson Church last night. There were scores of people there saying goodbye to you, Ravi, being there to support you, making a whole big dinner, making signs. And in these last weeks, you haven't stopped talking to people, advising them about what to do in their cases, taking phone calls, learning about ICE raids throughout New York.
In actual fact, last week I went to Union City. The mayor of Union City had worked with us
in New Jersey.
And he issued a municipal ID 6 weeks after we talked to him, and he called for a town hall. And he expected 50 people. 1,600 people showed up in a church that was only supposed to hold 500. And those were the people who were allowed inside. There were hundreds outside. People are afraid. They need to have this information. And yes, you're right. I have not stopped speaking. I have not stopped doing presentations, because it's a number, the immigrants themselves, the people who want to support them, the churches who need to be ready to have to create this safe space. We need to coordinate that. Now, what you saw yesterday wasn't last night wasn't a goodbye, but an empowerment dinner, because that's what we do. We empower people through this process. They're afraid. Most of them who you met there, the parents are undocumented themselves, but because we have been able to teach them how to deal with this trauma, this process, they are strong and they're energized and they're motivated to speak up and also to move forward. So they will be down here today.
What is a Jericho walk?
Jericho walk, it is biblical. It's in the story in the Bible where they couldn't defeat this city. And God told them, well, you cannot defeat the city by army, but you follow my instructions and you will win. So they were told to walk around 7 times around the city. And after 7 times, the walls came tumbling down. There's a song about that. But similarly, we have been doing the Jericho walk since 2011, which started as a result of, in response to SB 1070, the Arizona law. We walk around Federal Plaza 7 times in silence.
This is around Federal Plaza, 26 Federal Plaza area? It
is around 26 Federal Plaza, and we have done it around 26 Federal Plaza. We've also done it around the Supreme Court. 500 people have walked around the Supreme Court. We have walked around Congress. We have walked around the Senate building in silence. And, you know, when the guards or the officers see us, they don't know what to take up, how to think about us, because we're not saying a word, but you know we're there for a purpose. Similarly, the Jericho walk today is going to be doing that. If you are taken, where would you be taken to? Where are immigrants taken in New York City when they are detained? It could be a number of places. They could be taken to New Jersey, Hudson County Correctional Center, the Bergen County Jail, or I could be taken to Orange County up in Genosha, right, upstate New York. So any one of them, I will be held and detained until they find they can put me on a plane and take me to Trinidad. Now, Amy, you are an immigrants' rights lawyer. For a long time, you ran the Newark office of AFSC. Yeah. That's New Jersey. Right. These detention centers mainly are for-profit detention centers. The Elizabeth Detention Center, I think, is run by CCA, right, the Corrections Corporation of America. These for-profit jails are enjoying massive profits since President Trump was elected.
That's right. In New Jersey, there's actually only one that's private. That's the Elizabeth Detention Center, as you say. There's also these county jails that contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and make tons and tons and tons of money for the counties themselves. So they celebrate when they get these contracts because they're paid approximately, you know, $120, $130 per day per detainee. So they, Hudson County, for example, has over, I think, 900 beds. Essex County Jail is over 800 beds. So we've got people detained everywhere. Profits are soaring. Prior to President Trump, President Obama's administration had actually said they were going to stop using private prisons in the federal prison system. We were pushing to have that happen in the immigration detention system. We got close to that. And then Attorney General Sessions came in and completely retracted that. So we're back into private prisons and all the private companies that contract with public prisons that are making money on this.
So you know how much it costs to feed it, when I was locked in detention, you know how much it cost to feed me for one day? 75 cents. They were spending to feed one immigrant 75 cents. And you know how we knew that? Because they felt they were spending too much, and they wanted to bring that cost down to 45 cents. So the numbers were thrown out, and we were hearing and seeing this happening. So the profits, the cost is low, but the profits are high because they're being paid $120, right?
So have you packed? People often don't know that they're going to be taken, but you confront this epic moment right now after being in this country for 27 years. How did you prepare for this morning?
I did not pack. My wife has been telling me to clean up, but I haven't done that. I've ignored that. Basically, how I've prepared is throwing myself in my work. I've been doing presentations 2 and 3 times a day, sometimes speaking for 4 hours straight to congregations or churches. So that's how I've dealt with this. Last night you asked me how I felt. Well, I told you I had no feelings because if I was going to feel something, I was going to feel terror. I was going to feel anxiety. And to feel that and be able to work, be able to function was impossible. And I couldn't allow myself to curl up in a corner and die, which is where they want us to be. I had to continue doing the work and continue to share the experience so that as a privileged person that I am, meaning that I can go back to Trinidad without feeling the fear that I could be targeted, as other countries and other immigrants face. I also am able to speak, and I also have community support. So I'm privileged, and I use this opportunity to highlight that situation.
Who will be speaking today at the news conference, just as this show ends, that you'll be holding it right outside 26 Federal Plaza?
We have been told that apart from the faith communities, that Reverend Donna Scarpa will be speaking, but we have had the elected.
Reverend Donna Scarpa is the Reverend of the Judson Church, where the New Sanctuary Coalition has its offices.
That's right, and she's the one she was one of the co-founders of the New Sanctuary Coalition of New York, but also of the National Sanctuary in 2007. But apart from that, they have a lot of elected officials who are coming to support me, to walk in with me. So Senator Gustavo Rivera will be there. You have Councilman Drum, Councilman Williams, Jumani Williams, Councilman Rodriguez. The Speaker just confirmed, Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito just confirmed she will be there.
The Speaker of the New York City Council, Melissa Mark-Viverito, will be also speaking and accompanying you.
Yes, we don't know if she'll accompany us, but she's speaking at the press conference. The controller is planning to be there. We have had 2 State Assembly people who also wants to speak, the Squadron and
Joanne Simon.
Joanne Simon,
our Assemblywoman.
The Assemblywoman in the state legislature.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you will together walk into the ICE office.
Together we will go through security. They make you take your shoes off, right, to get into that building. Take your belts off and ask you for ID. And a lot of people who are going into that space that don't have ID, so they intimidate you from the beginning. And when you go upstairs, you are having to hand in this paperwork and sit down there in complete terror because every minute that goes past, you are thinking that this is the day. And you're sitting next to people who are facing that same trauma. And they themselves, you feed out that fear, and you sit down and you see the child and the wife who may have accompanied them, and the tears and the heartbreak that is happening because they've been ripped apart. So it is hard for me as a person to see that, although I'm going through it myself, but this is why we have had the accompaniment training. So we want people to see that so they can take it back out and force and push for true reform where people can live in dignity without that fear.
Do you see yourself as a role model?
I do not want to think of myself as a role model because then it clouds where I need to be. I need to be always aware that even though I may have support, I have to think about those who do not have support. So I always have to be ready to think about the consequences of a policy change on someone who do not have that support. But what you saw yesterday is those immigrants who says I've been a role model for them, so that they are now speaking up, and they are now empowered to go out and speak to the elected officials and go out and advocate for themselves. And go out, even though something may go wrong, they know that as they go through this process, it will be good for them because they are ready for every step of the way. So I do not want to be a role model, but I have been told I am.
Do you have a message for President Trump?
I will let my wife answer that.
Ooh, if only. God, I would desperately love for us to have a president who saw the humanity in every single individual and understood that every person should be treated with dignity and respect. That's my message. And that all of our policies should reflect that.
Not only for immigrants. We're talking about he's been, using other rhetorics that is targeting and causing. As a result, there's a lot of hate that is on the streets. We need to look at everyone as being part of a society that wants to grow together and work together. So everyone needs to be able to build that relationship together.
I wanted to end back in your basement where you were last night, the basement of the Judson Church in New York City, to go to Judith Paez, who was speaking during what could be your last meeting at the New Sanctuary Coalition. People were making banners for today's Jericho Walk outside 26 Federal Plaza. This is Judith.
We started making these banners yesterday, and we had the idea a few weeks ago about doing all this kind of art to represent what we are here in this sanctuary. We are fighting for our rights, but not just a fight. It's not just a fight. It's something to show support, to show unity, to show strength in our communities that have been suffering for all this new government, the policies that are separating families, are breaking apart many families in this city and many other places around the USA.
That was Judy Paez in the basement of the Judson Church. As we wrap up, this is right when kids are going to school. But a lot of kids are afraid. Their parents don't want to send them to school. Afraid, like we just played the video that has gone viral of the dad taking his 13-year-old to school, and he's arrested, and she is weeping as she's filming this on her phone. What do you say to these families? Are you finding that families are taking their kids out of school?
We are finding that they are taking their kids out of school. But the kids that are going to school, they've had many teachers and principals call and say, can you come and do a beyond the rights training? So,
What do you mean by beyond your rights?
Well, the rights, the know your rights that we used to say before, basically stops at if they knock on the door, don't open the door. But if we expect this administration, if we don't know what rights could be violated, and we have to have everyone prepare for that. So during this process, if they get captured, what do they need to do? They don't have to sign any stipulated waivers, so that they have to go through the court system. Sharing with people that they will not get deported immediately. There's a process, and that process could take months and even years. When I was in detention, I met someone who was there for 7 years in detention. He still got deported, but he was fighting throughout that 7 years, hoping that he could stay here. And we will speak to the parents about this process, so they're not afraid. As I was saying, the principals were called because those children are crying. They don't stop crying because they don't know if their parents will be home when they leave school. And how does that environment facilitate learning? You would think that only applies to the young children, the 10 and under, but the elderly, the older children are feeling this also, and everyone wants to needs this help and needs to know the beyond the rights, so that they know how not to get caught and how to navigate the process every step of the way.
Well, all the best to you both. We will continue to follow what happens to you, and people can go to democracynow.org as we go down to 26 Federal Plaza, where you'll hold your news conference, and then you'll make your way up into the ICE facility, and we'll see what happens next. We hope to see you again, interviewing you as you come out and say how you felt coming out again as a free man.
I hope so. I hope to be back here talking to you.
Thank you so much, Ravi Ragbir and Amy Gottlieb. Ravi, well-known immigrants' rights advocate, executive director and founder of the New Sanctuary Coalition of New York City. He faces deportation when he goes to his ICE check-in this morning after our broadcast. But first, there'll be a news conference, and we will be covering that at 9 o'clock at Federal Plaza, right outside 26 Federal Plaza.
At Foley Square.
At Foley,
yes.
Right at Foley Square.
Yes.
I know hundreds of people are planning to go.